Good morning, everyone. Well, let's see, what to talk about today. One of the things I was thinking about talking about was just a general organizational strategy. We all have things that we need to get done, and we have a finite amount of time to get them done. And so we need to keep track of them and somehow prioritize them so that we spend the time we have available working on the most important stuff. This is something that most businesses have some kind of process for doing, and I've always thought it's interesting that a lot of people that I know, they spend a lot of time in the workplace learning tools and techniques for being productive in the workplace, but then they leave those tools and techniques home. And in the old days, I thought, maybe that was because people didn't really own computers. But nowadays, a lot of these tools are available. A lot of these tools are available on mobile devices as well. So you can really take them anywhere. And that's also one of the advantages, is that, once again, back in the good old days, people would often keep a notebook or something, sometimes on their person, and that would, be where their Wunderlist was. And nowadays, thanks to cloud-hosted, documents and and apps that put their information on the cloud, it's possible now to have one solution that is available anywhere. So no matter where you are, when you think of something, you can just add it to your list. And so in general, let's see, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the technologies that I'm using right now to manage that for myself. Right now I'm using a program called Microsoft To Do, and it seems to be a rewrite of a app that I believe was purchased by Microsoft called Wunderlist. And Wunderlist was really nice because it let you share tasks lists with other people, and it would synchronize with them. So I started using it for my grocery list. I had been using OneNote, but OneNote, it does so much more. It's just a little heavier. Sometimes switching to something that is task specific, like focused on making lists and keeping them synchronized between people, that makes more sense. Also, unlike OneNote, Wunderlist was integrated with Cortana, which is Microsoft's personal digital assistant. So you can just issue a command to Cortana to add something to your grocery list, and it'll just pop up really quick in, whether or not you're using Xbox, or whether or not you're using HoloLens or a mixed reality headset, or if you're using a phone or a tablet or anything. So it's really nice. Even like Android and iOS have it as well. So I think it's cool to be able to pretty much, this is, before these whole home assistants like Alexa came about, I already had a bunch of devices with Cortana on them. Now they have a Cortana device that's whole home as well. I'm not sure I need one, because I have enough other devices that have Cortana handy that I can pretty much anywhere I am just say to add something to one of my lists. But that's Wunderlist. And Microsoft To Do, it's lacking currently two features. One is it doesn't seem to have Cortana integration yet, and which is strange, because I would think that'd be something to implement early on, and it's not. It's been quite a while since Microsoft To Do has been out, and this feature hasn't been added. The other is just being able to share a task list with other people. And so pretty much once those two things come, I'll be all in on Microsoft To Do. Now, some of the advantages to Microsoft To Do are that it integrates well with the existing task infrastructure provided by Microsoft. So if you had task lists in Outlook, or I know, I think a few of the mail apps had a task list integration similar to Outlook, even though they were more consumer version level apps. And also OneNote itself does have task integration with Outlook. So if you are in more of an Outlook environment, you get a lot of, which I am at work and even at home to some extent, then you do get some interesting integrations there because, like I said, I originally was keeping some of my task lists in OneNote, and now I can go through and convert those OneNote tasks into Outlook tasks and then see them through Microsoft To Do. The other thing that Microsoft To Do offers over Wunderlist, well, first of all, it's cross-platform. Like, I believe Wunderlist was available on all of the popular mobile platforms and also on Windows. There's a little helper tool in Microsoft To Do that lets you see, it gives you suggestions for what tasks you should be working on today. And so part of that is to review the list of tasks that you worked on yesterday. Just as a little personal goal, I tend to find that just do the sizing of the tasks I make for myself, about 3 a day seems to be an achievable goal. And sometimes I don't get those 3 done because of other priorities, and other times I get 20 tasks done. So I try and just set a goal of 3 each day to kind of set a pace. And Microsoft To Do helps with that. It shows you the task from yesterday. It shows you tasks that maybe you haven't looked at in a while, and also things that are upcoming or overdue, things that you've had reminders on. I don't really like the way the reminders were implemented. I think Cortana has a much better reminder system where it alerts you to something and lets you snooze it. At least last time I had a reminder in To Do, it popped up pretty aggressively, and there wasn't really a way to snooze it. I just had to reschedule it for a different time. There have been some updates since then, and I've been busy with other things, so I haven't kept up with it. So anyway, generally, I'll have a list of tasks. By default, they just go into a My Tasks section, but then there's also you can make sub lists. And so what I find is that if something becomes more of a project than just a mere task, then I tend to break it up into a bunch of smaller tasks so that I can keep my cadence up on working towards its completion. So yeah, I mean, another thing I do is there are certain things I can do at certain times. So to prevent myself from being distracted with things that I can't possibly do in the list, I go and I break out my list into a couple of key types of tasks. For example, I have tasks that I want to do while I'm at home. Obviously, if I get if I want to look at my list at lunch break, it doesn't matter if there's something I want to do at home. I can't do it then. I've got a list of electronic tasks, and I try to get those done really soon, really early on, because most of those items, they rely in some capacity on someone else. Right now I'm working on a task that after you make the changes to an online configuration, then you have to wait 60 days for them to unlock everything. So that's a perfect example of, don't put that off for 60 days and then wish it were done. Just get it done as soon as you have a chance, and then let the 60-day wait happen in the background. So yeah, I just try and organize stuff, so based on place and what type of work and when I can work on it. And then yeah, I don't know, what are the next different priorities I usually do. Well, I mean, I look at things that need to be done immediately. I mean, obviously emergency tasks go up there. I like to sometimes, if I'm not feeling very productive, track the things that I have done and have worked on. So even if I didn't think about creating a task for it before I did it, I kind of give myself credit in my done list, so that when I'm reviewing it, I can remember, wow, what did I spend my day on? And that helps a lot. So some of the things, I oftentimes have a to-do item for them, a task, and that's where I keep notes. Oh, that's another thing is in the notes fields of these. I try when I create the task to take any of the information that I have available and make it available in the notes field, so that when I do have a chance to work on it, I just open the task and click the link, and then I'm ready to go. And the advantage there is that, fewer distractions. A lot of times, if you just have a task of paying the mortgage online or whatever, and then you go and you fire up your browser, and then it suggests an interesting article to you, and next thing you know, you're 15 layers deep into Wikipedia articles or something like that. Having the direct link is nice, and in Microsoft To Do, I believe they're hot linked within the comments, so you can just open the task, click the link, and you're right to where you're going. It'd be nice to see some integration with Microsoft Edge and some of the other browsers as a plugin, so that maybe these to-do items were available there. So in general, that's how I use To Do. I tend to set deadlines for the more important things so that they tend to pop up in the suggestions a little more often. A lot of things I use Cortana for reminders. Those are mostly when place is an issue, or if Cortana pops up the reminders on all my devices. So I like to have a reminder, and then at key points in my day, like when I'm leaving for work, when I'm waking up, when I'm about to go home, I tend to just cycle through and review all of my Cortana reminders and see if there's anything that I'm forgetting. That's a thing that kind of amazes me. These personal digital assistants, they're really made to emulate what it's like to have an actual person helping you remember all these things. But so many people I know, when I ask them if they use them on a regular basis, they don't. I use mine probably 20 or more times a day, and so I obviously think it's very useful. One of the nice things about Cortana is it actually adds these reminders to your calendar, as long as it can't add a location specific reminder to your calendar because it doesn't know when you're going to be there, but it can add time-based ones, and so it's nice to be able to see those at a glance within the context of your other items. So yeah, I think that's I think it really, if you have a personal assistant available on your device, check it out. One of the nice things I like about Cortana, as I said earlier, is that it's on all of my devices, which some of the others like Siri and Google Now, you're a little limited to where your assistant is available. And I just love being able to, anything I'm doing, someone asks me to, one feature I'd really love to have on Cortana, by the way, is I'm often asked, I mean, this is something a real assistant can do that Cortana can't, and it's something that would be very, very useful, is that when a person asks me to remind them, so they have Cortana, I mean, pretty much everyone has access to Cortana, so they have Cortana, but then they don't actually use it themselves. So then they ask other people around them to perform the services of Cortana, like reminding them of certain things and all this. So I would love that capacity, that friends would be able to allow me and bosses or anyone who ever asks me to remind them of things, would allow me to set reminders for their personal assistant. Could be Cortana, Siri, or Google Now, I think they're calling it. So that'd be really cool, because then if someone says, hey, remind me to do this when I get here, I can just tell Cortana that, and then she can take care of it with the appropriate assistant. And there might be a little back and forth, like confirming who it is, kind of like if you do voice dialing on a phone. That's another thing, is I'd say, well, a lot of times, if I'm at home, I use Cortana's voice features. When I'm at work, I'm more likely to type out the commands, just because it's a noisier environment. Lots of other people are working. So I think it's really important for these assistants to actually support both audio and text really well. And, I think Cortana's been a little hit and miss on this. Sometimes you can type something and Cortana picks up on it right away. Other times I get directed to Bing results for something that I know she supports, and I wish I understood a little bit better what's causing those problems, so that I could, if there's anything I could do to work around them, then I would do that. Let's see, really quick, as we're wrapping up the drive here, I put in a plug for OneNote, so I'm using Microsoft To Do and OneNote and Cortana to do a lot of my organization. So what I do is I go through my emails, and then for anything that doesn't go on the calendar or in a to-do list, then, which I mostly use the to-do list, and then later, like probably a day ahead of time, or maybe 2 days ahead, or maybe if I have a stretch of time off, I might plan several days ahead. Then I go and actually put things on the calendar. So things generally go from email to the to-do list, which is very easy in Outlook. You can just drag emails to the to-do list. And so that's a good way to get them into the to-do app. But then there are some tasks that they're even too big or maybe amorphous. They're not very well defined, and you want to get all that information in one place so that you can refer to it later when you're working on the task. And so for that I use OneNote. So just gradually over time, as I notice that I'm collecting information on the subject, I'll go and I'll create a page for it or a notebook, and then I'll start adding stuff to it, and then I'll put a link to that in the task, so that it's, once again, one click away, and it's easy to refer to no matter where I am on what device. And that's the thing that's common among all these approaches, is that they're all available everywhere I am, and regardless of the OS or platform, and regardless of work or home. So I think that's helped me. I don't really have to spend a lot of time. I spend some of my downtime trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, prioritizing things, figuring out what's most important to me. But then when the time comes, when I do have a couple of minutes, I really try to just focus on working from the list, go to the appropriate list for what type of time I have available, whether it's a lunch break or whatever, and then bang out a couple of those items so I can get my 3 a day. Yeah, so anyway, if you found this helpful, let me know if you try these out or have any questions. And if you thought it was helpful, be sure to let friends know. I'm going to try and include in the description of this a link to a really interesting Microsoft Research podcast about the recent research in the most effective way to get lists of tasks done. And the research seems to point to actually micro tasks. So breaking larger tasks up into smaller ones and then making relentless progress on those smaller ones. And I was talking to my boss, and he was talking about a method called breaking the chain, which I haven't found a lot of concrete documentation on. I found an app, I think called chain.cc, that I think is about $2 on some of the platforms, and it's based around the concept. But the concept there is to get it into your routine to do a little bit of work on that. Another technique that I didn't really talk about that I use often if I'm having trouble getting traction is a thing called a Pomodoro, and that's where you can just do a search on the internet for Pomodoro task management or whatever. And what a Pomodoro is, a Pomodoro is apparently Italian for tomato, and it's called that because a Italian guy came up with the process, and he used a little kitchen timer that was shaped like a tomato. So a lot of apps now, I use the Alarms app in Windows. You can set a timer, and so what I do is I set 2 timers. One is a 5-minute timer for a break, and the other is a Pomodoro timer for a 25 minutes of focused work. So generally I'm moving from task to task, and so I don't really feel the need to focus any more tightly. But if I find I'm getting distracted, which I use an app called Rescue Time to keep track of that. I find that sometimes we can be dishonest with ourselves, and so if I have a third-party app monitoring how I'm spending my time, what apps I'm using, then I can look at that, and it's the truth. So But yeah, if I find that, if I look at my time on rescue time and I find that I'm not being as productive or not reaching some of my goals for how I spend my time for a particular day, then I go and I start trying to get a couple Pomodoros done, which are 25 minutes of undistracted work done. And then even if you're on a roll, forcing yourself to take that 5-minute break. Research has shown that forcing that break gives you a pause, and you can sometimes, while you're doing something else, first of all, it helps eliminate the distractions because you're able to put them off until a fixed time. You know, someone comes walking by your desk and they say, hey, do you have a minute to talk? And you say, well, I'm in the middle of something right now. Can I come back to you? And then, you know, say, you know, in less than a half hour, or if you have the timer up, just let them know an estimate of when you'll be ready, and then go talk to them then. Sometimes the 5 minutes can bleed over if your boss wants to have a discussion or something and it lasts longer than 5 minutes. So you would just, you know, start a Pomodoro when you're done with that. I find it helps generally to start on the half hours, just to try and fit them in well, but a lot of times when I just begin a period of focus, I'll just start one then. And having your own personal timers to do that helps facilitate that. So anyway, if you like this, please like and subscribe and set your little bell thing in YouTube. And most importantly, if you think anyone else would benefit from this conversation, then go ahead and send them a link to the vlog, so, and my channel. All right, have a good one. I'm heading off to work.